Okay. So here I am. Here's a Long John page that's... Let's get everything set up here. Don't need that pen. Just gonna throw it on the ground. What is this? So... Okay. So what I'll be using, as you can see, I'd already started on this one. This is a page. Sorry, I'm still going back and forth between screens here. That I started drawing. It's a big splash page of Long John looking into the woods. And I'm going to try a different angle this time. I'm worried about it being too skewed and you couldn't see, but I don't know if people really care about that. Pardon. You might hear the fan on. I'm located at Sacramento. It's supposed to be 104 today. And so I'm saying screw audio fidelity. I'll move the microphone closer though. And we'll do what we can. I'll broadcast for about an hour or so. These are the main tools that I use. Micron pens. I think I've talked about this before. Ranging from 3 to 8, or 03 to 08 size. I have an 01. It's not very reliable. I see a lot of people drawing with those small, tiny 01 pens. Actually, I threw it on the floor. There it is. But my nib is wobbly and busted, but whatever. So I'll put those off to the side here. With all these trees, I'll probably be breaking out my brushes, which, depending on, these are the main ones that I use. These are just Utrecht brushes, mixed synthetic bristles, size 2 and size 6. I'm mostly filling out a lot of spot blacks and whatnot. Back when I drew Ebony 7, and I haven't used it on Long John. That was a weird emphasis. Long John. I used these nib pens, these dip pens. This is for the larger, thicker lines. And I don't know if I have the smaller. Oh, there they are. This is the main one I would use to draw figures and whatnot. This is just a Speedball 2? Pro Quill 2? I can't remember. It's been a while. And I use this Japanese Sumi ink that is a bit hardcore for what I need to do, but let's try and get this going here. So I'm probably going to start with all the small details that are going right here in the mid-ground. One of the things I try to keep in mind, I don't think I have another one. Okay, is really making the figure stand out from the background, and so I try. This might sound weird. I try to make the lines on the figures larger, thicker, more prominent, and try to ink the background in smaller, thinner, less precise line work. That's at least the aesthetic I use for Long John. You can see how kind of loose my pencils are. This is because for nature type stuff, you can just kind of be what's the word I'm looking for? Improvisational, because a lot of it's kind of based on patterns and just sort of textures. And maybe that's just me as a bad artist. I don't know. But we'll take a look here and we'll start working things in. My sort of guiding principle behind Long John and the style I wanted to draw with it is that I really wanted it to be fast. I didn't want to worry too much about mistakes and just kind of trust my instinct a bit more. And I've done my best to follow that, but it really hasn't made me faster. It's made me much more confident in the work that I do. Because I'm like, oh, I'm not as lazy as I thought. I'm just better than I thought. All right. Now, Long John takes place in the Sierra Nevadas, the eastern Sierra Nevadas. Where, despite being a Western, and I know this can kind of be problematic if I'm going to work with standard Western tropes, is that it's a very high mountain, desert, plains kind of thing. Which most deserts are very low. In relation to sort of, what's the word? Like sea level and the like. But the Mono Valley is very high. It's like 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet. I knew this at one point when it was much more relevant to my research, but I have since forgotten. And so the foliage is very different and very strange. One of the liberties I'm taking with Long John is that I'm actually putting probably more trees in the area than are actually there. The sides of the Sierra Nevadas are pretty arid and rocky, which don't help for melodrama. Now, although I think I can download it, YouTube automatically archives the streams. If I were doing this just as a recorded video, I'd probably speed up all the drawing stuff. One, because it looks kind of cool. Two, because I need to focus. And I'm not really good at talking and drawing, especially when I need to focus at the same time. I am by no means an expert in how to draw nature and the natural. One of my earliest videos where I drew a page from Evan 07, I did my best to kind of create a list of things I don't like to draw. And the list was very long. Getting better at drawing natural scenes, if only because long draw requires it. But what I like about actually drawing nature, and it's a very weak like, is that it is very random. I mean, you can kind of plan stuff out to the best of your ability, but what I like to do is just kind of revel in the chaos of it and let my sort of subconscious aspect of being able to draw take over a little bit. Not to the point of being illogical or lacking verisimilitude, but it hey Martha, it's my cat that just ran in here, if you could hear that. And so I just kind of use this when drawing scenes like this as a chance to kind of zen out, if you will, which maybe wasn't the best wasn't the best page to use as a page to stream, because mostly it's just me either listening to podcasts or music. Do I still have that one drawing? Let me look real quick. Not. There was a drawing that I did early on that kind of helped me feel more comfortable with drawing landscapes or at least natural scenes. And it was actually based on a photograph I took when I was out at Mono Lake and the area where Long John takes place. And I'm like, oh, this, and it was sketchy. It was, oh, you know what? It's actually the very first page of the comic. It's sort of the title page of the comic. And I liked it so much. I'm like, hey, this could actually work as a good first page, especially since one of the pages that I had planned I didn't actually end up drawing. But it really felt right in terms of style. And so I try to kind of look at that, at least keep that in mind when I sit down to have to draw these types of scenes, because one of the things I care most about, maybe this is my limited animation background. I'm not an animator by any sense of the word, but I like the idea of quote unquote being on model while also having the confidence of breaking from it. Okay. 1 second here as I... Okay. Sorry. So... a slight tilt on this thing, but whatever. looks his butt too. I drew. Speaking of staying on model, actually, I did not pay close enough attention and drew the broken butt flap on the wrong side. So I need to fix that. Where was I? One of the tones I want this page to give off, wow, is that the forest is very dark and foreboding. You know, relying on that trope a little bit. That going back, this is me getting English majory on you, but going back to the idea of the sort of difference between, in the early 19th century, the romantic poets, not romantic poets, but romantic writers, but they were poets too, who celebrated nature and its restorative properties because it was something that was conditioned and owned by man. That's a weird looking tree. I think of people like Wordsworth and, to an extent, Coleridge. But the nature they were talking about were these manicured lawns outside of huge estates and whatnot, whereas the American version of that, around the same time, a little bit later, are what they call the transcendental writers, where nature had a similar role in that it was humanity reconnecting with nature. However, nature was not an ally. Nature was cold. Nature was dangerous. Nature was something you had to meet on its terms. Which, obviously, I mean, if you think about it, is really endemic or evocative of the American experience, especially in the early days of settling, even through settling the West, where there were big open spaces, scary spaces, where you're not only contending with people that were already living there, but disease and perhaps even and animals and such that you had never encountered before. And so nature was tough. And if you survived it, you, in a sense, were surviving with it. And these lines are really messy, but coloring that stuff in will help. And so I want to bring that kind of transcendental literary aspect to it, where nature is a scary, dangerous place. if you're not ready for it. Ready for its trials, ready for its tests. That you only get as much out of it as, in a sense, you put into it. It's almost a zero-sum relationship, right? Where in order to get something, you have to have something taken away. And I do this, I'm like, oh, this is how I should have been doing it the entire time. Oh well, you live and learn. Let all the accidents stand. It's also probably me getting a little bored doing the hatching. So I should probably move on to something else. So something to kind of a little more mood and mystery to these things, while not losing what it actually is in the process. And the hatching is just me being unable to avoid my 90s upbringing, right? Because that was like with Jim Lee or something like that, right? You had like, let's just see here. You had like this is gonna be terrible, right? You got big muscle, right? And right, something like that. And, yeah, something like that, right? And then, so that's a flexing muscle around the bicep. Let's just try to finish out this hand, but drawing hands quickly is not my favorite thing ever. Right. That's a bad hand. Don't look at that hand. So what they would do would be something like, right? Well, actually, they would put the thin lines on top, right? And then all these kinds of rib cage things, right? A lot of effort for something that's actually kind of dumb here. And then something like that, and have like a vein here. But anyway, on the muscles, they would have like because everything was shiny, they would have like this clear line, a very thick top, something like this, and then like slowly hatch away, right? Give a sense, and like every single muscle had this. It was very strange, and I remember doing my best to copy it without even understanding what the hell I was copying. It was very strange. Anyway, so that's what I don't do anymore. But the 90s were weird, and part of me, when I was getting back into drawing, was trying to get rid of those influences, and so I tried to stay away from hatching as much as possible. But then you see someone like Hayao Miyazaki with his Nausicaa comic. Hey, the UPS man's here. That's awesome. And you see different hatching, not necessarily with the cross hatching, but with something kind of similar to what I did in the very first chapter of Long John, where I was trying really, really hard to do unique looking things, which took up a lot of damn time. So I've kind of stayed away from it, but for splash pages such as this, I do like to put a little extra edge in there to make it stand out. I would like to make it pop. And so, not the very first page of Long John, but the I got that wrong earlier. The title page wasn't the sketch I did. It was the title page was the one where I had sort of extreme close up of the bird on the tufa rock. And I spent a lot of time on that because I just wanted it to be very noticeable. I wanted it to be very memorable. And if you notice, in key scenes in Long John, you still see a bird. I overthink this stuff way too much. Okay. It's actually going a little bit. This is going a little bit faster than I expected, believe it or not. So, at this point, it's just kind of adding in details so I don't leave too much just blank negative space on here. That's a gross tangent I just did, but I'll live with it. I never got a lot of art theory. I don't have too much of a... I'm sorry about the lawnmower in the backyard? Front yard? Front yard. There to be no one in my backyard. But I picked up a couple things here and there, but some tactics just still elude me, just because I was introduced to them fairly late, and I guess part of my problem is being an old dog. Nude tricks? No, not nude tricks. New tricks. Kind of situation where it takes me a long time to kind of understand new concepts. One of those is tangents. I hadn't really heard about them until fairly recently. I would say within the last 5 or 6 years. I lost a pen. As I get closer here to the camera, so to speak, I'll go with a thicker pen here. But though I really first heard about tangents and that they were bad was from watching I guess it's a reality show called Strip Search, and again, not nude techniques, but new techniques. That was a reality show put on by the webcomic guys at Penny Arcade. I'm gonna get that pen I dropped. 1 second, please. And it was a competition where they had webcomickers come on the show with the premise or the promise of the winner getting space to work out of the Penny Arcade offices for a year, as well as getting their comic published on Penny Arcade for a year. It was an interesting show. I'm kind of glad they didn't go further than where it went, just a year. But they'd have these sort of face-off competitions at the end of every episode, or every day, I guess you should say. where they just throw a couple of words at the contestants, and you had to draw a comic in an hour or something like that. And Mike, the artist, Mike Krahulik, always talked about tangents. I'm like, what? This is just talking about two lines touching? Like, that happens all the time, bud. But it's just, if you know about it, and if I guess I would argue if it's something you knew about from when you were, if something you've been conscious of for nearly your entire creative life, then it's something you hold pretty dearly because you do your best to avoid it. Maybe some more big rocks here. This is something that I can see some of the points he's making, but most of the time, a lot of the time, I can tangents don't seem to be the biggest problem that some people think they are. And if you do think that they're a problem, that's fine. You're welcome to that. But I don't think it's necessarily. I think we should spend more time focusing on composition and acting. And I guess apparently the term acting is kind of a bad word or an outdated word at this point. But I think acting is really important because you want to have believability in your characters, not just good punchlines. And maybe if I did take anything from what limited animation experience I have, it's creating believability through posture and pose, and that such things are signs of good art. And not something that is too design focused, like I would say tangents. And I think that's something that's overlapped in the last. I'm not going to put a year time frame on it, but something that has come across as especially the internet and artistic expression have collided. And this isn't a bad thing by any means because it introduces new ideas and great concepts. But the overlap between artistic narrative and graphic design is pretty. Oh, there's Rusty. There's my cat. Okay. Is getting fairly strong, and perhaps too strong in some cases. And a lot of graphic design theory is getting, and justly so, appropriated by comics. And I think that's fair. There's a lot of graphic design that's in play there because you have to design a page. You can't just draw cool shit all the time. You have to actually be able to tell a story visually. And I think graphic design has a great hold on that, but it does not hold the master key, the skeleton key. Oops. Not quite sure if it's still recording, but whatever. Now I want to say that maybe, and again, I'm not an authority here, but stuff like tangents, rule of thirds, to an extent, come over from graphic design. And while not invalid, are not the only keys to making comics great. Again, not saying that my comic is great by any means, but it is. I try to be very conscious when I make pages, even if some of the choices I make are not the best. And I never claimed to be the best. Try to be a bit more subtle. Like I said, Zen. Try to create some depth here, having some things stick out a little bit more from the stuff immediately before them. A lot of this stuff I'm not being too careful with it because I kind of want it to look gross in a strange way. But also a lot of this will get covered up by color. Okay. So how do I do this? I might need to think on the rest of this for a while. Take a little break. Maybe come back later. so you can kind of see the effect I'm trying to create here. Let me put these pens down. By having it hatching and trying to create a sense of depth here, perspective that is slowly coming together. I think I'm gonna stop it there. So thank you for checking out this video, and if you have any comments or questions, leave them as comments, I guess, and I will try to make this a regular thing. I hope you enjoyed it, and it should be archived on YouTube, and I'll post the link to the appropriate places later if you want to watch it from the beginning. But I'm going to take a break, let the dog out, get out of this hot room, enjoy this 100-degree weather by crying in a dark, dark corner. I'm Bethel, and that was my stream. Blip, blip.